The autumn wind cut through Deadwood's main street like a rusty blade, carrying the scent of wood smoke and desperation. In the fading light of 1886, the Dakota Territory town buzzed with its usual mix of miners, gamblers, and drifters, all seeking their fortune in the Black Hills. But 3 miles east of town, where the prairie stretched endlessly toward the horizon, Jonah McCrae, known to locals as the Lonesome Rider, sat on his porch, watching his 7-year-old son Eli play with wooden horses in the dirt. "Hi, how are you? Sorry to interrupt your story, but what I'm going to ask you is really quick, and it will really help the channel to grow and create new stories. Just click below the video image to subscribe. You'll be doing an act of kindness and encouragement to those who are just starting out. Thank you very much, and continue with your story." Jonah was a man carved from hardship. At 43, his weathered face told stories of loss and survival. His wife had died in childbirth with their second child 3 years ago, taking both mother and baby in one cruel night. Since then, he'd raised Eli alone on their modest homestead, working odd jobs in town and keeping to himself. The boy had grown quiet after losing his mother, speaking only when necessary and never to strangers. "Pa, look," Eli said softly, holding up a carved horse. "This one's like thunder." Jonah smiled at his son's reference to their old mare. "That's real fine work, son. Your mama would have been proud." As darkness crept across the prairie, Jonah was about to call Eli inside when he spotted a figure stumbling along the dirt road. At first, he thought it might be a drunk miner heading back to town, but as the figure drew closer, he realized it was a woman, and she was in bad shape. "Eli, get inside," Jonah said quietly, his hand moving to the Colt .45 on his hip. The woman approached slowly, her steps unsteady. Her dark hair hung in tangled strands around her face, and her simple dress was torn and stained with mud. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. "Please, sir," she called out when she was still 20 feet away, her voice hoarse and desperate. "I don't mean no trouble. I need help." Jonah studied her carefully. She appeared to be in her mid-20s with green eyes that held a haunted quality. Despite her bedraggled appearance, there was something about her that seemed familiar, though he couldn't place what. "What kind of help?" he asked, not moving from his porch. Just some scraps of food if you can spare them, and maybe a place to sleep for the night. I can work for it. Clean, cook, whatever you need. I'll be gone by morning, I swear it." Something in her voice, a raw vulnerability mixed with quiet dignity, made Jonah's resolve waver. He'd learned to be cautious in Deadwood, where trust was often repaid with betrayal, but this woman seemed genuinely desperate. "Where you coming from?" he asked. "Denver," she replied, swaying slightly on her feet. "Been walking for near 2 weeks. Got robbed by bandits outside Cheyenne. They took everything. My horse, my money, even my coat." Jonah noticed she was shivering despite the mild evening. Her lips had a bluish tint that spoke of exhaustion and hunger. "What's your name?" "Clara Hawthorne," she said. "And I know how this looks, sir. A strange woman showing up at your door asking for charity. But I'm not a thief or a working girl. I'm just trying to get somewhere safe." Before Jonah could respond, Eli appeared in the doorway behind him, curious about the visitor. The moment the boy saw Clara, something extraordinary happened. His usually shy demeanor vanished, and his eyes lit up with a recognition that made no sense. "Mama?" Eli whispered, so quietly that Jonah almost didn't hear it. Clara's head snapped up, her eyes focusing on the boy with sudden intensity. For a moment, neither of them moved, as if frozen by some invisible force. Then Eli did something that shocked Jonah to his core. The boy who hid behind his father's legs whenever strangers came around, who barely spoke to the preacher or the school teacher, suddenly ran down the porch steps straight to Clara. "Mommy!" he cried, throwing his small arms around her waist. "You came back! Pa said you went to heaven, but I knew you'd come back." Clara gasped and stumbled backward, but Eli held on tight. Her hands hovered over the boy's head, as if she wanted to touch him, but was afraid to. I don't understand," she stammered, looking up at Jonah with confusion and something that looked like fear. "I've never seen this child before." But even as she spoke, Her hands gently settled on Eli's shoulders, and Jonah noticed tears forming in her eyes. "Eli, come here," Jonah said firmly, his voice tight with emotion. "That's not your mama, son. Your mama's in heaven, remember?" "No, Pa." Eli's voice was stronger than Jonah had heard it in months. "This is Mama. She smells like Mama's flowers, and her hands are soft like Mama's hands." Jonah felt his world tilting. His wife Sarah had indeed loved wildflowers and had the softest hands he'd ever known. But Sarah was dead. He'd buried her himself in the little cemetery behind the church in Deadwood. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I think you'd better come inside. We need to talk." Clara nodded, still looking dazed. Eli took her hand and led her up the porch steps, chattering excitedly. "I knew you'd come back, Mama. I kept your picture by my bed and I talked to you every night. Pa cried sometimes when he thought I was sleeping, but I told him you weren't really gone." Inside the modest cabin, Jonah lit an oil lamp and studied Clara more carefully. In the warm light, the resemblance to his late wife was even more striking and more troubling. She had the same heart-shaped face, the same delicate bone structure, even the same small scar on her left hand that Sarah had gotten from a kitchen knife. But there were differences, too. This woman's hair was darker, her voice slightly different, and she seemed younger somehow. Most importantly, Sarah had never left Deadwood in her entire life, while this woman claimed to be from Denver. "Sit down," Jonah said, gesturing to the wooden table. "Eli, get the lady some water." As Eli bustled around playing host, Clara sat heavily in the chair, her exhaustion evident. "I'm sorry about your boy," she said quietly. "I don't know why he thinks I'm his mother. I've never been married, never had children. I don't even remember much before 5 years ago." "What do you mean, you don't remember?" Clara's hand went to a faint scar on her temple. "I was in an accident. Stagecoach overturned outside Denver. When I woke up in the doctor's office, I couldn't remember anything before that day. The doctor said it happened sometimes with head injuries." Jonah felt a chill run down his spine. "When was this accident?" 5 years ago this October." The timing made Jonah's blood run cold. Sarah had died in October 5 years ago, but that was impossible. He'd been holding her hand when she died, had watched them lower her coffin into the ground. "Mama, are you hungry?" Eli asked, setting a cup of water in front of Clara. "Pa makes good beans, and we got some bread from Mrs. Henderson." Clara smiled at the boy, and Jonah's heart nearly stopped. It was Sarah's smile, the same gentle curve of the lips, the same way her eyes crinkled at the corners. "That's very kind of you, sweetheart," Clara said, and even her voice seemed to be shifting, becoming more familiar with each word. As Jonah watched his son interact with this stranger, he noticed something else that made his hands shake. Eli was animated in a way he hadn't been since Sarah's death. The quiet, withdrawn boy had been replaced by the cheerful child he'd been before tragedy struck their family. "Ma'am, Clara," Jonah said, his voice strained, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to think real hard before you answer." She nodded, her green eyes, so much like Sarah's, focused on his face. "Have you ever heard the name Sarah McCrae?" Clara's face went pale and her hand flew to her throat. For a long moment she didn't speak, just stared at Jonah with growing recognition and terror. Sometimes I have dreams," she whispered, "about a man with kind eyes and a little boy with dark hair. In the dreams they call me Sarah, but they're just dreams. They have to be just dreams." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows of the small cabin. In the distance, Jonah could hear the sound of horses approaching, multiple riders moving fast across the prairie. Clara heard them too and jumped to her feet, her face filled with panic. "They found me," she breathed. "Oh God, they found me." "Who found you?" Jonah demanded, his hand moving to his gun. "The men who've been following me. They say I stole something from them, but I don't remember taking anything. They've been chasing me for weeks." The hoofbeats grew louder, and Eli pressed closer to Clara, his small face filled with fear. "Don't let them take Mama away again, Pa," he pleaded. Jonah looked at his son, then at the woman who might or might not be his dead wife, then at the door where dangerous men were about to arrive. In that moment, he made a decision that would change all their lives forever. "Get behind the bed," he told Clara. "And whatever happens, stay quiet." The riders were almost at the cabin now, and Jonah could see torchlight flickering through the windows. Whatever truth lay behind Clara's identity, whatever impossible situation he'd stumbled into, he wouldn't let anyone harm the woman his son believed was his mother. Not again. The riders surrounded Jonah's cabin like wolves circling wounded prey. Through the window, he counted at least 6 men, all armed and wearing the hard expressions of professional manhunters. Their leader, a tall man with a silver star pinned to his black coat, dismounted and approached the porch with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way. "Evening," the man called out, his voice carrying the authority of law enforcement. "I'm Sheriff Marcus Garrett from Denver. We're tracking a dangerous fugitive who may have passed through these parts." Jonah stepped onto his porch, keeping his hand near his gun but not drawing it. Behind him, he could hear Eli whispering urgently to Clara, telling her not to worry because Pa won't let the bad men hurt you. "Sheriff," Jonah nodded. "Bit late to be riding, ain't it?" Garrett's eyes were cold and calculating. "Desperate times call for desperate measures. We're looking for a woman, about 25, dark hair, green eyes, goes by the name Clara Hawthorne, though she's used others. She's wanted for murder and theft." "Murder?" Jonah kept his voice steady despite the shock. "Killed a banker in Denver, stole nearly $10,000. She's clever and dangerous, Mr. McCrae, Jonah McCrae, and I haven't seen any women matching that description." One of the other riders, a burly man with a scar across his cheek, urged his horse closer. "Sheriff, there's fresh footprints leading right to this cabin. Small boots, woman-sized." Garrett's smile was predatory. "Is that so? Mr. McCrae, you wouldn't mind if we took a look around, would you? Just to be thorough." Inside the cabin, Jonah could hear movement. Clara was probably trying to find a better hiding spot. He needed to buy her time, but he also needed to protect Eli. "Actually, I would mind," Jonah said firmly. "My boy's sleeping and you got no warrant. This is still America, last I checked." The scarred rider laughed harshly. "Awful protective of a woman you claim you ain't seen." "I'm protective of my property and my son's peace," Jonah replied. "You want to search my home? You come back with proper papers." Sheriff Garrett studied Jonah for a long moment, then signaled to his men. 2 of them began moving toward the back of the cabin while another positioned himself near the window. "Here's the thing, McCrae," Garrett said, his hand resting on his gun. "This woman is extremely dangerous. If she's in there and something happens to you or your boy because you tried to protect her, well, that blood's on your hands." Before Jonah could respond, Eli appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes as if he'd just woken up. "Pa, what's all the noise?" "Just some men passing through, son. Go back inside." But Eli, with the fearless curiosity of childhood, stepped onto the porch and looked up at Sheriff Garrett. "Are you a real sheriff?" the boy asked. "You don't look like Sheriff Bullock from town." Garrett's expression softened slightly as he looked down at the child. "I'm a sheriff from Denver, son. We're looking for a bad woman who hurt some people. You haven't seen any strangers around here, have you?" Eli shook his head solemnly. "No, sir. Just me and Pa. And Mama. But she's not a stranger." Jonah's blood turned to ice. Garrett's eyes sharpened with interest. "Mama? I thought you said it was just you and the boy, McCrae." "The boy's confused," Jonah said quickly. "His mother died years ago. Sometimes he still talks about her like she's here." But Garrett was studying Eli with the intensity of a hawk watching a mouse. "Son, where is your mama right now?" "She's inside," Eli said innocently. "She was real tired from her long walk, so Pa told her to rest." The silence that followed was deafening. Garrett's hand moved to his gun, and his men tensed, ready for action. "McCrae," Garrett said slowly, "I think you and I need to have a more honest conversation." Inside the cabin, there was a sudden crash as something fell over. Garrett drew his weapon, and his men followed suit. "That's enough," Garrett barked. "Boys, surround the cabin. If anyone tries to run, shoot them." Jonah's mind raced. He was outnumbered and outgunned, with his son in the line of fire. But as he looked down at Eli, this boy who'd been more alive in the past hour than he'd been in 3 years, He knew he couldn't let them take Clara without a fight. "Eli, get behind me," he ordered, drawing his Colt. "Now that's not smart, McCrae," Garrett warned. "You're one man against 6. Think about your boy." "I am thinking about my boy," Jonah replied. "And I'm thinking about what kind of man I want him to see me be." The standoff stretched taut as a bowstring. Then, from inside the cabin, came Clara's voice. "Stop! Please, don't hurt them! I'm coming out!" "Clara, no!" Eli cried, but she was already moving toward the door. She emerged slowly, her hands raised, her face pale but determined. In the torchlight, Jonah could see she'd been crying. "There she is," the scarred rider said with satisfaction. "The murdering thief herself." "I didn't murder anyone," Clara said firmly. "And I didn't steal anything. I don't even remember." "Save it for the judge," Garrett interrupted. "Boys, put her in irons." As 2 of the men moved toward Clara, Eli suddenly broke away from his father and ran to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Don't take Mama away," he screamed. "She just came back. You can't take her away again." One of the men reached for Eli, and that's when Jonah's restraint snapped. He lunged forward, tackling the man and sending them both tumbling off the porch. The other riders shouted and raised their weapons, but they couldn't get a clear shot with Jonah and their companion rolling in the dirt. "Run!" Jonah shouted to Clara as he grappled with the fallen man. "Take Eli and run!" But Clara didn't run. Instead, she picked up Eli and backed toward the cabin, her eyes darting between the armed men. "I won't leave without you," she called to Jonah. "We're a family. Families stick together." Her words hit Jonah like a physical blow. Even in this desperate moment, even facing capture and possible death, she was thinking like Sarah, putting family first, refusing to abandon those she loved. The man Jonah was fighting managed to land a solid punch to his ribs, but Jonah responded with an uppercut that sent the man sprawling. He rolled away and came up with his gun drawn, but found himself facing 5 weapons pointed at his chest. "Enough!" Sheriff Garrett roared. "McCrae, drop your weapon or I'll put a bullet in you right here in front of your boy." Jonah hesitated, his gun steady despite the odds. Behind him, he could hear Eli crying and Clara trying to comfort him. "It's okay, sweetheart," she was saying. "Everything's going to be okay." "Mama, don't let them take you," Eli sobbed. "I don't want to lose you again." Clara's voice broke as she replied, "I won't leave you, baby. I promise." The tenderness in her voice, the natural way she comforted Eli, the protective stance she'd taken, everything about her screamed mother. But how could that be possible? "McCrae!" Garrett's voice cut through his thoughts. "Last warning." Jonah looked at his son, then at Clara, then at the men who wanted to take her away. In that moment, a memory surfaced, something that had been nagging at him since Clara's arrival. The night Sarah died, there had been complications. The doctor had worked frantically to save both mother and child, and for a few terrifying minutes he'd thought he'd lost Sarah too. She'd been unconscious for hours afterward, and when she finally woke up, she'd seemed different, confused, disoriented. She'd asked who he was, where she was, even what year it was. The doctor had said it was normal after such trauma, that her memory would return. And it had seemed to, gradually. But now, looking back, Jonah wondered if something else had happened that night, something the doctor hadn't told him. "Sheriff," Jonah said slowly, lowering his weapon but not dropping it. "What if I told you this woman might not be who you think she is?" Garrett's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "What if I told you she might be my wife? My wife who supposedly died 3 years ago." The words hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Clara gasped, and even Garrett looked taken aback. "That's impossible," the sheriff said. "We have witnesses who saw Clara Hawthorne in Denver. We have evidence of her crimes." "Oh, do you have evidence that she's the same woman?" Jonah pressed. "Or just evidence that someone using her name committed those crimes?" For the first time since arriving, Garrett looked uncertain. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that maybe someone stole more than money in Denver. Maybe they stole an identity, too." Clara stepped forward, still holding Eli. "What are you saying, Jonah?" Jonah looked into her eyes. those familiar green eyes that had haunted his dreams for 3 years. "I'm saying that maybe you didn't lose your memory in an accident, Sarah. Maybe someone made you forget who you really are." The revelation hung between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. But before anyone could respond, the sound of more horses echoed across the prairie, riders approaching fast from the direction of town. "Sheriff!" one of Garrett's men called out. "We got company coming!" As the new riders drew closer, Jonah could make out the distinctive silhouette of Sheriff Seth Bullock from Deadwood, along with several townsmen he recognized. "Well," Jonah said grimly, "looks like this night's about to get a lot more interesting." Sheriff Seth Bullock rode into the circle of torchlight with the authority of a man who'd tamed one of the wildest towns in the Dakota Territory. Behind him came Doc Cochran, the town's physician, along with 3 other men Jonah recognized as respected citizens of Deadwood. Their arrival shifted the balance of power in ways that made Sheriff Garrett visibly uncomfortable. "Evening, Jonah," Bullock said, dismounting with practiced ease. His keen eyes took in the scene, the armed men, Clara holding Eli, and the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "Heard there might be some trouble out here." "Sheriff Bullock." Garrett stepped forward, his badge catching the torchlight. "I'm Sheriff Marcus Garrett from Denver. This is official business. We're apprehending a fugitive." Bullock's weathered face remained impassive. "Is that so? And what crime is this alleged fugitive supposed to have committed?" "Murder and theft. The woman killed a banker and stole $10,000. "Interesting," Bullock said, his voice carrying a hint of skepticism. "Because I just received a very interesting telegram from Denver about an hour ago." Garrett's confidence wavered slightly. "What kind of telegram?" "The kind that says the real Clara Hawthorne was found dead in a Denver alley 3 days ago, shot in the back. Seems someone's been using her identity for quite some time." The words hit like a thunderbolt. Clara gasped and nearly dropped Eli, who was still clinging to her desperately. "That's impossible," Garrett sputtered. "We have witnesses." "You have witnesses who saw a woman claiming to be Clara Hawthorne," Bullock corrected. "But according to the Denver marshal, the real Clara Hawthorne was a blonde woman, 5 feet tall, with a distinctive birthmark on her neck. This lady here doesn't match that description at all." Doc Cochran stepped forward, his medical bag in hand. "May I examine the lady, Sheriff? There might be a way to settle this matter once and for all." "What are you talking about, Doc?" Jonah asked. The elderly physician looked at Clara with professional interest. 3 years ago, I was called to assist with a difficult birth here in Deadwood. The woman had complications, severe bleeding, trauma to the head when she fell during labor. I had to perform emergency surgery." Clara's hand went instinctively to her temple, where Jonah had noticed the faint scar earlier. "The surgery left a very distinctive mark," Doc continued. "A small scar in the shape of a crescent moon, just behind the left ear. If this woman is who I think she might be, she'll have that scar." "This is ridiculous," Garrett protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Even if this woman isn't Clara Hawthorne, she's still a fugitive. She's been traveling under false papers." "Actually," Bullock said with a slight smile, "that's where things get really interesting. You see, I also received some information about you, Sheriff Garrett. Turns out the real Sheriff Marcus Garrett died in a shootout in Colorado 6 months ago, so either you're a ghost or you're not who you claim to be either." The fake sheriff's hand moved toward his gun, but he found himself facing not just Bullock's weapon, but those of all the Deadwood men as well. "I'd think real careful about your next move," Bullock warned. "You're outnumbered and outgunned." Meanwhile, Doc Cochran had approached Clara gently. "Ma'am, would you mind if I took a look at that scar? It might help us figure out who you really are." Clara nodded, her hands shaking as she moved her hair aside. Doc examined her carefully, his expression growing more amazed by the moment. "Well, I'll be damned," he whispered. "It's her. It's definitely her." "What are you saying, Doc?" Jonah's voice was barely above a whisper. "This is Sarah McCrae. I'd stake my medical license on it. The scar, the bone structure, even the way she holds her left shoulder, it's all exactly as I remember." Eli looked up at Clara with triumph in his young eyes. "I told you it was Mama, Pa. I told you." But Clara, Sarah, was shaking her head in confusion. I don't understand. How is this possible? I remember the accident, waking up in Denver. That wasn't an accident, Doc said grimly. After the surgery, you were unconscious for days. I was worried about brain damage, memory loss. But then you seemed to recover. You recognized Jonah, you knew Eli. I thought everything was fine. It was fine, Jonah said, his memories flooding back. For about a week. Then you started having headaches, saying you felt confused. One morning I woke up and you were gone. There was blood on the pillow, signs of a struggle. The fake sheriff, the man calling himself Garrett, was growing increasingly agitated. This is all very touching, but it doesn't change anything. The woman is still a criminal. No, Bullock said firmly. The woman is a victim, and you, my friend, are under arrest for impersonating a law officer, kidnapping, and probably a whole lot more. As Bullock's men moved to apprehend the fake sheriff and his gang, Doc Cochran continued his examination of Sarah. The memory loss makes sense now, he explained. Someone must have given you another head injury, probably drugged you as well. They could have convinced you of almost anything while you were in that state. But why? Sarah asked, tears streaming down her face. Why would someone do this to me? Money, Bullock said grimly as his men secured the prisoners. The real Clara Hawthorne was apparently involved with some very dangerous people. When she got killed, they needed someone to take her place, someone who couldn't remember their real identity. One of the captured men, the one with the scar, suddenly spoke up. She's lying. She knows exactly who she is. She's been working with us all along. Shut up, you fool, the fake sheriff snarled, but it was too late. Working with you how? Bullock demanded. The scarred man, apparently hoping for leniency, continued talking. The boss needed someone to play Clara Hawthorne after the real one got herself killed. This one was perfect. Already had memory problems, no family looking for her. We just had to convince her she was Clara and send her to do the jobs. What jobs? Jonah's voice was deadly quiet. Seducing rich men, getting them to trust her, then robbing them blind. She was good at it too, even if she didn't remember being good at it. Sarah staggered backward as if she'd been slapped. No, that's not true. I would never. You wouldn't, Jonah said firmly, moving to support her. Not the real you. They used you, Sarah. They turned you into someone you're not. Eli, who had been listening to the adult conversation with growing understanding, suddenly spoke up with the clarity that only children possess. Mama, you came back because you love us. The bad men couldn't make you forget that. Sarah knelt down to Eli's level, her hands cupping his small face. I did forget, sweetheart. I forgot everything. But somehow, when I saw you tonight, it felt like coming home. That's because love is stronger than forgetting, Eli said with absolute certainty. Pa told me that when you went away. He said even if you couldn't come back, you'd always love us. As the prisoners were loaded onto horses for the trip back to Deadwood, Doc Cochran pulled Jonah aside. Her memories might come back gradually, he said quietly, but they might not. The trauma she's endured, both physical and psychological, could have permanent effects. I don't care, Jonah replied, watching Sarah interact with Eli. Memory or no memory, that's my wife. That's Eli's mother. We'll make new memories if we have to. Bullock approached them, his expression serious. There's going to be an investigation, Jonah. Federal marshals will want to talk to Sarah about the crimes committed in her name. It could take months to sort out. We'll face it together, Jonah said, as a family. As the group prepared to head back to Deadwood, Sarah approached Jonah hesitantly. I know this is all confusing, she said. I know I'm not the same woman you married. I don't remember our wedding, or Eli's birth, or any of the life we shared. Maybe I never will. Jonah took her hands in his, noting how perfectly they fit together, just as they always had. Sarah, do you remember what you said to me the night Eli was born? She shook her head, tears in her eyes. You said that love isn't about remembering the past. It's about choosing each other every day, building something new together. You said that as long as we had each other, we could face anything. I said that? You did. And I'm saying it back to you now. I don't care what you remember or don't remember. I choose you, Sarah McCrae. Today, tomorrow, and every day after that. Sarah's tears flowed freely now, but they were tears of relief and hope rather than sorrow. "I may not remember loving you," she whispered, "but I can feel it. It's like a song I've forgotten the words to, but the melody is still there." As they mounted their horses for the ride back to Deadwood, Eli called out excitedly, "Pa! Mama! Look at the stars! They're all bright tonight like they're celebrating!" Jonah and Sarah looked up at the vast Dakota sky, brilliant with stars that seemed to shine with extra intensity. For the first time in 3 years, Jonah felt truly hopeful about the future. "Yes, son," he said, reaching over to take Sarah's hand. "I think they are celebrating." The journey back to Deadwood would mark the beginning of their new life together, a family reunited against impossible odds, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. 3 months had passed since that fateful night when Clara McCrae returned from the dead. The federal investigation had concluded with the arrest of the criminal organization that had kidnapped and manipulated her, and Sarah's name had been cleared of all charges. But the real work of rebuilding their family had only just begun. On a crisp December morning, Jonah stood in the doorway of their cabin, watching Sarah teach Eli how to braid rope. Her memories had returned in fragments. A smile here, a shared joke there, the way she hummed while cooking, but large portions of their past remained locked away. Yet somehow it didn't matter as much as he'd thought it would. "Pa, look!" Eli called out, holding up his attempt at braiding. "Mama showed me how to make it strong enough for thunder's rains." Sarah smiled at the boy's enthusiasm, and Jonah felt his heart swell. That smile was pure Sarah, the woman he'd fallen in love with all those years ago. Memory or no memory, his wife had come home. "That's fine work, son," Jonah said, stepping onto the porch. "Your mama always was good with her hands." "I was?" Sarah asked, looking up at him with the curious expression she wore whenever he shared details about their past. "The best seamstress in Deadwood," Jonah confirmed. "You could mend anything, clothes, hearts, broken dreams." Sarah blushed slightly, still adjusting to hearing about the woman she used to be. "I've been thinking about opening a sewing shop in town. Mrs. Henderson says there's a real need for it, especially with winter coming." "That's a wonderful idea," Jonah said, settling beside her on the porch step. "You always talked about having your own business." As they sat together in comfortable silence, the sound of approaching horses drew their attention. Sheriff Bullock rode up with a stranger, a well-dressed man in a fine coat and hat. "Morning, folks," Bullock called out. "This here's Judge Harrison from the Territorial Court. He's got some news for you." The judge dismounted and approached with a formal air. "Mr. and Mrs. McCrae, I've come to inform you that the last of the criminals involved in your wife's kidnapping have been apprehended. The leader of the organization, a man named Vincent Cray, was captured in San Francisco trying to board a ship to China." "What will happen to them?" Sarah asked. "Long prison sentences, most likely. Cray will probably hang for the murders he committed. You can rest assured that they'll never hurt you or anyone else again." Relief washed over Jonah's face. For months, he'd worried that someone might come looking for Sarah, trying to drag her back into that criminal world. "There's something else," the judge continued. "The money stolen in those robberies, nearly $50,000, has been recovered. Since you were an unwilling participant, coerced through drugs and manipulation, the court has decided that you're entitled to compensation for your suffering." "How much?" Jonah asked. $5,000. Enough to buy some land? Start that business you mentioned? Maybe send your boy to a good school when he's older?" Sarah's eyes widened. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll use it to build a good life," the judge replied kindly. "You've been through hell, Mrs. McCrae. You deserve some happiness." After the judge and sheriff left, the family sat on their porch discussing the unexpected windfall. Eli was full of suggestions. A bigger house, more horses, maybe even a trip to see the ocean. But it was Sarah who voiced what they were all thinking. "I want to use some of it to help other people," she said quietly. "Other women who might be in trouble, children who need homes. I know what it's like to be lost and alone." Jonah reached over and squeezed her hand. "That sounds exactly like something you would say." "Would have said," Sarah corrected gently. "I'm not the same woman I was before, Jonah. I may never be. No, he agreed. You're not the same. You're stronger. You survived something that would have broken most people, and you came back to us. The Sarah I married was wonderful, but the Sarah sitting here now is extraordinary. That evening, as they prepared for bed, Sarah found herself standing in front of the small mirror in their bedroom, studying her reflection. Jonah came up behind her, his hands resting gently on her shoulders. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I'm trying to remember our wedding day," she said softly. "I know it happened. I have the ring, the certificate, the stories you've told me, but I can't see it in my mind." Jonah was quiet for a moment, then began to speak in a voice filled with tenderness. "It was a simple ceremony in the church in Deadwood. You wore your mother's dress, white cotton with tiny pearl buttons. Your hands were shaking so badly I had to help you with your vows." "Why were my hands shaking?" "Because you said you couldn't believe someone like me would want to marry someone like you. You thought you weren't pretty enough, smart enough, good enough." Sarah turned in his arms, looking up into his weathered face. "And what did you tell me?" "I told you that you were wrong. I told you that you were the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, not just on the outside, but on the inside where it really mattered. I told you that marrying you was the smartest thing I'd ever done, and that I'd spend every day of my life proving I was good enough for you." Tears glistened in Sarah's eyes. "Do you still feel that way, even though I'm different now?" "Especially because you're different now," Jonah replied, cupping her face in his hands. "You chose to come back to us, Sarah. Not because you remembered us, but because something deeper than memory brought you home. That's not just love, that's destiny." The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Doc Cochran arrived with a young woman and a small child, a girl who couldn't have been more than 5 years old. "This is Mary Sullivan," Doc explained. "She's been caring for little Annie here since the child's parents died of fever last month. Mary's looking for work, and you thought we might need help," Sarah finished, already kneeling down to the little girl's level. "Hello, Annie. What a pretty dress you're wearing." The child, who had been hiding behind Mary's skirts, peeked out shyly. "My mama made it," she whispered. "She must have loved you very much to make something so beautiful," Sarah said gently. Within an hour, it was settled. Mary would help Sarah with the household and the sewing business they planned to start, and little Annie would have a home with people who understood what it meant to be a family forged by choice rather than just blood. As Christmas approached, the McCrae household buzzed with activity. Sarah's sewing business had taken off beyond their wildest dreams, with orders coming in from as far away as Rapid City. Eli had blossomed under the attention of his restored mother and new sister, becoming the protective big brother Annie needed. And Jonah found himself falling in love all over again, not with the memory of who Sarah had been, but with the remarkable woman she had become. On Christmas Eve, as snow fell gently outside their expanded cabin, the family gathered around their small tree. Eli had carved wooden animals for everyone, Annie had picked wildflowers that Sarah had pressed and framed, and Mary had knitted warm scarves for the cold Dakota winter. "I have something for all of you," Sarah announced, producing a carefully wrapped package. Inside was a quilt she had been working on in secret, a beautiful creation that told the story of their family through fabric and thread. "Look," she said, pointing to different sections. "Here's the night I came home. Here's Eli teaching Annie to ride. Here's Jonah building the addition to the house. And here," she pointed to the center of the quilt, "here's all of us together." The center panel showed a family of 5 standing in front of a cabin, their faces turned toward a bright star in the sky. But it was the border that made Jonah's breath catch, hundreds of tiny stitched words that formed a continuous message around the entire quilt. "Love is not about remembering the past," he read aloud. "It's about choosing each other every day, building something new together." "You remembered," he whispered. "No," Sarah said, smiling through her tears. "I learned from you, from Eli, from this family we've built. The past is gone, but the future is ours to write." As they sat together by the fire, Annie fell asleep in Sarah's lap while Eli leaned against Jonah's shoulder. Mary quietly excused herself to her own room, leaving the core family alone with their thoughts. "Pa," Eli said sleepily. Are you happy Mama came back? Happier than I ever thought possible, son. Even though she's different? Jonah looked at his wife, this extraordinary woman who had fought her way back from the darkness to find them again. Especially because she's different. She chose us, Eli. Out of all the places she could have gone, all the lives she could have lived, she chose to come home to us. I knew she would, Eli said with the absolute certainty of childhood. Love always finds a way home. As the fire crackled and the snow continued to fall, Jonah McCrae held his family close and marveled at the truth his 7-year-old son had spoken. Love did indeed find a way home, sometimes in the most unexpected and miraculous ways. Outside, the stars shone brightly over Deadwood, bearing witness to a family that had been broken and made whole again, a love that had conquered memory loss and criminal manipulation, and a future that stretched ahead of them bright with possibility. The Lonesome Rider was lonesome no more. Hello, how are you? Did you enjoy the story? Like, share, comment on which city you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel to help us continue adding new amazing videos. Thank you very much and come back often.